Salutations, everybody. It is Maddie here today with episode 142 of the H.A.M Radio Podcast.
And it's me, Karak, with ACG.
No Lone this week, but we got two excellent guests. Would you guys kindly introduce yourselves?
My name is Tarmack. I do a bunch of YouTube stuff, and I've been harassing these boys liberally over the last little while to try and, figure out what we're going to talk about. This is exciting. Good stuff.
Absolutely.
You should constantly harass these guys. They absolutely deserve it. My name is David Martinez. You can just call me D-Mart. And I'm one of the co-founders of Raw Fury. It's an indie publishing label. So, yeah. Awesome. And I've worked in the industry for like 8 or 9 years or whatever.
That's a lot of history. We're going to be going through some of that later. But, yeah, all the links to these guys' stuff will be in the description down below, along with the Patreon. If you're a $1 supporter, you get early access to this show. And it's also much easier for mobile because people always go like, hey, Maddie, where's the iTunes episode? Where's the Google Play episode? Oh, I uploaded it like a fucking week ago, but they still haven't posted it. So that shit happens all the time. The $1 Patreon donations, they make the biggest difference for that type of stuff. But, yeah, that's out of the way now. And let's move on to what is going to be, I'd say, the bulk of our discussion, which is an indie chat. It's an indie all-star week. There's a lot of big hits. I've noticed a lot of people talking about Celeste. Which apparently is very good. Tim Geddes is kind of funny. I know he posted something about it saying, like, there's no way any game's going to be better than this year. So what do you guys think about some of the indies dropping this week?
I mean, like, I feel like indies in January is kind of like the new AAA in October. It's like when October comes, it's like everyone's just like bam, 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 millions of marketing dollars being thrown all over your television set, right, and annoying the hell out of you before you watch your YouTube videos, and that's kind of I think now January is that for indies, so it's not that much of a surprise to see. It's like everyone wanted to drop their game in the fall, but now it's like, oh, you got like Battlefront 2, which is whatever. I'm sure we'll talk about that. And all these other games coming. I was like, oh, let's just push them back a little bit. And now January, here we are, and it's like a million really cool indies just dropped at once. Like Celeste, you mentioned Celeste. I haven't played it personally yet. I've watched probably like 3 or 4 videos on it. It looks stellar. It looks like that really like awesome tight platforming experience you want with a couple like little twists in it, right? Made by the guys that did Towerfall, I think. That's kind of a popular game, I hear. What else did you have? You had Iconoclast come out. It's like another Metroidvania that just dropped recently. I think we had a couple of those last year as well. Hollow Knight was one of those last year. That was pretty cool.
That's a good one.
But yeah, you have on the Switch alone, you have a lot of games that are finally coming to it that were really popular indies like Darkest Dungeon,
Thimbleweed.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh,
yeah,
good game.
Thimbleweed Park, man, dude.
Oxenfree.
I have a
Couldn't help yourself, huh?
I have a signed copy of a Maniac Mansion box signed by Ron
do you?
Gilbert.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's like my nerd gift. I met him one time. I did a little bit of PR for Sega, and he was getting the game published by them, so I had to work with him for a tiny bit. And the first time I met him, I was like, I'm going to do like a fanboy thing, Mr. Gilbert. I need you to sign this, And he did it. It was really cool, so I have it hanging around
That
here.
reminds me of when I met Lorne Lanning from Oddworld, and I'd grown up on his games. I love Oddworld games to death, and my dad and I always played them together. And my exact words to him at E3 after having this long talk, serious business about all his games, I'm like, hey, man, can I get a picture? I want to show my dad. That's what I said to him. Just complete 180 on what we've been talking about this whole time.
That's totally cool. I mean, we're allowed to fanboy, right? Even though we're entrenched in this.
Yeah, you seem cool.
Of course. Yeah, I got to meet Ron Gilbert at PAX. He struck me as quite a humble guy. Like I was talking to, because we played the Monkey Island series and all of that kind of stuff way back, and it was almost like he didn't like being told that his stuff was great. It's like, relax. So yeah, it was good.
That reminds me, because when I was talking to Lauren, he was the same way. I told him how much I loved Munch's Odyssey. He's like, yeah, we didn't do a great job on that. I didn't like that one much. I was like, oh, I'm living in my own little bubble where I'm like, this game's awesome. It's got so many cool things for it. And he's like, yeah, wasn't feeling that one. We tried too much. I was like, okay.
It's funny. It's funny how that is sometimes. Like the one thing that you really gravitate toward from an artist or whatever ends up being the thing that they don't like the most. Like to take it to music really fast. Like I grew up liking Nine Inch Nails and And one of my favorite songs is "The Perfect Drug," which I guess is one of Trent Reznor's most hated songs that he put out.
It's my favorite one too.
Yeah, but he doesn't like it at all, which is funny.
Wow. Imagine doing that. Like, all right, like as a YouTuber, you make what you, and for some reason you post it, what you think is an atrocious video, and you hate it, and that goes viral.
Yeah.
You know,
all of a sudden you become the next Slither.io YouTuber sensation. You're like, no, this isn't what I wanted.
I think it's just you see all the mistakes that you know you made, and nobody else sees them because they didn't, they weren't there doing all the video cuts and this, that, and the other, and so every time it bugs you, especially when a ton of people are seeing it.
True.
Tarmack, or when it comes to these indies in January and February, is there anything that captures your attention, like that you're?
What was the game? They had a release date somewhat recently. I have to harass them again. It's Devolver, Crossing Souls. Looked very interesting. I don't have it yet. I'm going to be trying to see if I can get a hold of that one, but I've been watching it for a while. Celeste looks good. I mean, I'm just no good at the platformers, and it looks cruel. Same. Like, I was watching a couple of video clips and things like that of it. And in my head, I'm comparing it to those stupid, Super Mario Maker levels and shenanigans like that. It just looks cruel, but awesome. I mean, yeah.
I'm the same way. I've been playing Samus Returns on my 3DS, and I'm like, man, I just suck at these types of platformers. I lack precision. I die a lot. It's like it's the biggest hole in my gaming.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. I'm going to put my sunglasses on, so anybody watching, it's not because I'm high, because I've been sitting in front of these lights for fucking 14 hours. Also, thanks to the patron for the sunglasses. When it comes down to it, like indies and stuff, you have Thimbleweed Park, Oxenfree, which I'll mention a second time, even though Maddie gives me shit every time I mention it, because I love that fucking game so much. Life is Strange, we just got done with that new set of prequels. But it is interesting, David mentioned that like January, February is sort of the fall, because it magically happened without, like, we used to all sit there, and this happens still in summer, but you know how it is. We're always like, oh, there's no games this month, like he said. And then all of a sudden, it's like they're not the AAA, but there's so many, we call them AA, whatever, budget, not even budget, but those sort of titles that don't get the huge publisher support. But you find all this incredible stuff that's out there. And I don't think I'll be playing that Celeste game, because I did see it too, and it looked like it was just flicking your nuts for 20 minutes. Like, there's no way I would play that game. But
flicking, not even full on kick.
Oh no, just have you ever done that where you accidentally like tap it and you're all, ooh, my stomach, just 20 minutes of going just a little bit. I could tell you a story about one time dropping sandwich crumbs on my crotch with my Levi's, and I went to flick it off, and I basically that's where I got that joke, because it was real.
That must have been the hardest flick of your life. That stuck with you, man.
Dude,
I went the pre to this and everything.
Cadiz was with me, the guy who's on the channel, and I mean, I had torsion on that finger, and I was like, and my brain was all, you're fine, and I didn't realize I wasn't like this. I was straight down, and I just went. Wow, and it's, you know how it is. You guys know how it is, where your stomach's immediately like, we're fucked. So anyway, all conversations go wrong with me. What I was saying about indies is, it's awesome because what it does is it gives those guys a chance to shine, and it also gives the games that maybe aren't perfect a little bit more of leeway, which I think is good, because not every title has the fucking resources like GTA, or not GTA, but Rockstar, to say, hey, Red Dead's going to be delayed. Right? Some of them don't have that money. And so it's so cool to see a little indie say, January, February, we're going to release some stuff. And it just sort of gets that fan interaction, which fucking I love.
No, you are 100, man, because like for us, right, we have a game coming out on Tuesday, actually. It's like a Metroidvania called Dandara. And I promise that's the only time I'm going to plug it. But it was supposed to be like a fall release. And we were like, you know what? Let's just push it back a little bit. And right now seems to be the perfect time. It's like Tuesday. It's like February 6th. It's like there's not that much going on. It's like you do have the Shadow of the Colossus remake, but I mean the people are going to buy that and the people are going to buy an indie game are like two different audiences, right? So yeah, we're looking at like, cool, this worked out. It was good. It was a good decision to make.
Yeah. What about the summer? I always associate indies with the summer. It's interesting you guys are bringing up January, February. I think like Pyre. I know this isn't an indie, but like a AA game. We were talking about that a little bit. Hellblade. Those are some of my favorite games.
Maddie, did Ori come out? Ori and the Blind Forest, or Ori, whatever. Did that come out in summer too? I thought it did. Ooh. Maybe it was just right at the end.
I'm not sure. I thought that for some reason I'm thinking October on that one. I don't know why, but that's just my memory. But yeah, I usually think summer's an indie. Is that still a thing? I mean, Rocket League, that was in the summer too.
I think that still is a thing, and it might have even been pioneered from like the early the late 2000s. So you used to have Xbox on the 360 radio, Xbox Live Arcade. They had like a summer of arcade. That's when they released Braid. That's when they released Limbo. That's when they released oh god, I'm like missing like a zillion indies now. But anyways, like that was like their thing. It was like 5 indies over like 4 months or something like that are going to be released, and they did it for years. And I think that's still kind of like a holdover. It's like here, play these small bites over the summer while you're traveling or in between traveling, right? In preparation for all the cool AAA stuff that's going to come out, starting like late September.
A lot of it just it seems to have more to do with Christmas, I think, than anything. And because we haven't seen this kind of growth in the game industry this is new, right? So January, February traditionally is bill shock for people's credit cards, right? They have spent too much money over Christmas. They're not going to buy any games. So none of the AAAs want to release then. Well, now we have so many indies coming out, so many games coming out every year. The summer, if that traditionally is when they were all locked in and normally coming out, well, the only time you can go now is you got to pick like a January, February release because that's when the window is there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they don't need those enormous sales. They don't need to sell 9 million copies or whatever it is that Battlefront was. EA was disappointed in.
9 million wasn't enough. Capcom and them need to get together. Dude, their financial people are English majors. They're the dumbest people I've ever seen.
Don't forget Square.
Square's, let's sell Hitman because it did really well. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about the slowdown of AAA games around this time, but I feel like also we've seen over the past couple of years, like last year, Resident Evil 7, great game. That came out in January. Yeah. Now we're seeing DB Fighters and Monster Hunter in the same day at the end of January, and I've been playing personally both of them, and Monster Hunter has been the one that surprised me. I was all about DB Fighters. That was one of my most hyped games. And all of a sudden, Monster Hunter comes in and is like, yeah, you're going to enter this vortex and time will disappear. And that's what's been happening to me. Every night, I'll start and then I'll look at the clock and go, holy shit, it's 2 a.m. Okay, I need to stop. But, it's interesting how you mentioned, Tarmack, how, the industry's growing. We're seeing even big AAA launches like this so early in the year now.
Just wait until... we hear about all the delays now that Red Dead has a firm release date, right? Of October 26th. No one's going to release a game in October. Everyone's going to push their AAA to January. Nobody wants to compete with that.
Did you see the JPEGs, David, where like it said other developers seeing the release date, and they're like, people are crying, and it's different people from like football teams that have lost the Super Bowl, and they're bawling, and I'm like, that's not a joke. I can tell you right now, at least one person I know works at one of those companies was like, oh, fuck!
Yeah, no one's happy. But it was funny. I put out some snarky tweet. It was like, unless you are a PR or marketing person working at Rockstar in October, just take the whole week off. Just take that whole launch week up. You're not going to do anything.
Play their game. Play their game, David.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm just going to give in.
Yeah.
Everyone else is doing it.
Anybody can dedicate the 4 hours to the campaign it's going to have.
Yeah,
I hope not.
Because we've seen what happens with games that try to launch alongside a really big title. The one that always sticks with me is Fallout 4 and Tomb Raider on the same day, and I'm like, Square, what are you doing? And as the release date came closer and closer, we're like, please stop, don't do this, just don't. And all of a sudden, Rise of the Tomb Raider is a colossal flop because it got launched on the same day as the biggest game of that year. It's insane.
I think part of it also might be it was an Xbox exclusive, right? Tomb Raider.
That too.
Hopefully it picked up a little bit when it launched like a few months later on PC. I bought it like day one PC because I like that reboot of the franchise.
So do I.
Maybe Titanfall 2 had the same thing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention, Tarmac. Titanfall 2.
Mm-hmm. Oh gosh,
yeah. That was a bad setup. Yeah.
Let me just say this. Exactly, and Maddie and I were talking about this prior. I've never seen a PR person get shafted or get like destroyed by their own developer on the stage. I don't know if you guys saw this, but there was an interview where the guy who runs Titanfall, I can't remember his name, the dude who split off.
Vince?
Is it Vince? But he was sitting there, and the EA spokesman was like, we've decided because of the release dates to move these together, blah, blah, blah. And he just looks over at him and is like, and this is, remember, he works for him. And he's all, whatever the fuck that means. Like, you could tell those developers were not happy. They were legitimately not happy about Titanfall's release date. And I thought that was awesome. You saw some feedback right there, like real live relationship advice going on.
I was legit shocked that they announced a Titanfall 3. I was like, really? After 2? I mean, like, and that sucks because I hear 2 surpassed 1 in every single way. Like, I hear like so many great things. I never touched it. I played 1, was like completely like turned off by it, didn't bother with 2. But the few people I know that have tried 2 were like, this is fantastic. Like, it's really good. So I'm glad that to see they're going to get a third shot at it. So hopefully the first two lessons have been learned. But we'll see. They'll probably stuff some microtransactions in there.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, it's got to be something because they went exclusive, and that's when the Xbox One was really in the shitter. Didn't succeed. Then you got, obviously, the release date issue with Titanfall 2. And then it's like, what are they going to do with 3 this time? But with that said, I mean, we know that Anthem got delayed in turn because of a Battlefield game launching. So they have learned their lesson to at least some extent about releasing games on top of one another, because Anthem was slated for this fall. They delayed it because they say it's a do-or-die game for BioWare, and in its place is now going to be Battlefield 2018, whatever this is going to be set during. I don't have any ideas on a new Battlefield game, personally. Maybe World War II because of Call of Duty. I don't know.
What if it's not like a traditional Battlefield game? What if it's like another like a Bad Company or something, or a Hardline? I love
Bad Company 3. Oh,
because they haven't said which studio is working on it yet, right? So I mean, they haven't announced anything about it. It's just kind of one of those. I think it was like another earnings call where they were like, "Oh yeah, there's new Battlefield coming in 2018." Everyone's like, "What?" And then there's no details.
Yeah, that's the strangest thing about these earning calls. Like, how does that work? Does anyone here know how that side of the industry works with the earning calls and how people listen in on them and stuff?
Yeah, Tarmack covers it a lot too.
Yeah, I mean, you can. So all of the big companies, Activision, Ubisoft, EA, and all that, they'll all have information on their website. You just look for like the investor link. And calling into, I don't know that they're all public necessarily. Like, you can anybody can call in and listen in. Whether there's, if you have to actually own stock to get that number, that I'm not 100% sure of. Okay. But I mean, the earnings call is basically them trying to hide as much information as possible, and keep everybody happy, right? So they're only going to talk about the good things. They're going to try and gloss over all the bad stuff, and then you get to the questions, and that's where it gets really interesting, because you have somebody that owns, $1 million, $2 million of stock in EA that gets to ask a question and say, so why'd you fail at this? And you get to watch them snake around it. It's brilliant.
Wow, it sounds so entertaining. I wish these were live events, man. I'll buy some stock just to hear that shit.
David, did you say you had
no,
sat in on some? Or?
No, I haven't. No, I have reporter friends that have for sure. But no, I think Tarmack he put it down pretty well. Yep, that's it. It's like if I don't even think you have to be a stock owner. You could be media as well. They let them in on it, and it's just like one gigantic party line where you just see a bunch of executives just suck each other off, and and then try to please their stockholders, because that's what they have to do.
Raw fury, everybody. Raw fury.
What we needed? Oh, you know what we needed? We needed Devolver Digital and Raw Fury on the same podcast. So
we could have made that happen. We could have made that happen.
After that Devolver E3 thing.
Oh, it was brilliant, man. Man, that was so good. So good.
Yeah, no, dude. Well, if you ever do another one of these, like with indies or whatever, like let us know, because we all know each other. Yeah. We all know each other. It's
connections.
Like, yeah, no, it's good. Well, we're all in the same boat, we're all the scrappy little dudes trying to compete against gigantic companies with millions of dollars. Like, I'm just like, I'd be happy if a game made $1 million. Like, that's where we're at. It's like, woohoo, But yeah. Dude, make one of those up, a panel of indies, and we'll come.
Beast. Speaking of gigantic, we got to talk about that. Karak dropped the news on me right before we stopped. Curved my mood a little bit. Gigantic isn't being supported. Like, what's going on with that? It's not being supported.
So, shutting down in July.
Shutting down in July. And I covered that my first GDC, so 2015, I think. And I'm telling you, it's if you followed them, I don't know how long you followed them, Maddie, but it's one of the it's that moment when like your best friend is just, you know, slowly dying. Because that is exactly, I'm not lying, this is the way it felt. I showed up and they're like on the wall, they had this banner and it said, here are all of our heroes in gigantic. And they were some of the coolest looking designs I think I've ever seen for a game. And I legitimately mean that. Like I would have no problem saying that they were fucking phenomenal. And every 6 months, Gigantic just kept doing, like you kept hearing about cuts. It was horrid because I went there and they were like, this is going to be the greatest thing ever. And we're playing games and having a blast. And I go home and I'm like, this is going to be great. And each 6 months, there's like a couple heroes were cut. This was cut. This was cut. And that's why I was so confused, because when you liked it, I was like, really? Because I didn't even really know it was out. And that was another thing, is it was remember that release, they got fucked over. That was the release where where it went out on the Windows Store and Microsoft didn't do any PR for it at all. It just showed up. And so it was just like, Merry Christmas. And you're all, thanks, man.
Yeah, I started playing it in December of 2016. I don't even remember how I discovered it, actually. I think I just saw it and downloaded it, and it was free. I was like, screw it. But I enjoyed the hell out of that game. And funny enough, with this time news, I remember I was telling you, Karak, I was like, I dusted off the Xbox One finally, and I fired it up just to play Gigantic. I waited 5 minutes for a match, and I couldn't get anything. And I wasn't finding anyone the day after, and I was like, oh boy, this isn't good. And I can only tell you one thing, that the game's basically dying. And so when you told me the news, I wasn't surprised at it. It was more so the reality shock. It was like, fuck, it happened. You were hoping like maybe they get a PS4 launch, inject some life into it, maybe have it catch a little bit of fire, but
you know what disturbs me too? I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but what scares me is they're gone for good. So like the thing is there isn't some fucking library where you can go and check out an old game that was online. When this goes away, it will go away unless you get an emulator. Earth and Beyond, for example, was an MMO from EA from years ago, and they, somebody found a way to do the emulation of the server and stuff. That's not that often. Usually it's just they're gone. And there's something really scary and really horrible about the idea that there is a chance that will just be snipped out, and you literally will never be able to experience it.
It's like PT,
like it's just gone.
The demo when they just completely snuffed that out. Although these weren't that fucking good a game, so I don't care. But like when Activision lost their deal with Nickelodeon or Spider-Man or something like that, like all their superhero games just disappeared, and you just couldn't download them anymore. So stuff like that. That's why I have never been 110% into the digital age. Obviously, it comes with a lot more benefits, but as someone who grew up with the physical stuff, like all of us here, it's like that's always been so much more appealing for those exact things. This just came in the mail today, right here. It's like my memories live on. Just
right.
PS2 game. Stuff like that, man. It's why I have a tough time coming to grips with the digital stuff. But I gotta ask David, as someone who's helped launch games before, how tense is that atmosphere? Or
man. Yeah, dude, it's I've been actually saying this for like the past week, because I've been like crazy busy preparing for our own launch, right? And it is this amazing mixture of pure enthusiasm and excitedness and absolute like being terrified. And it really is like that polar opposite. It's like on one hand, it's like, oh, when so and so from large website or this person, large YouTuber reaches out and is like, hey, I want to play your game. I'm just like, yes, and then subsequently I'm just like, but what if they don't like it? What if it fucking sucks? What if nobody buys it? All these thoughts going through your head constantly, right? And you have no idea of really knowing, like, until your launch day, and that's it. And even then, it's like, oh, did it make its money back on day one? Is it going to be like a slow burn, but still going to be profitable? Or did it just completely tank and you're going to have to be like, write that development cost off, like, we're not making it back, and it's crazy, but I don't know. It's a cool feeling, and it's something that you never get used to, like, for sure. Like, I don't know how many games I've launched. I'm not trying to sound like, oh, I've done 1 million, but I just mean like, maybe I've launched like 40 or 50 games or something like that over like a very long period of time, and the feeling is always the same. So
have you been through it all, like the flops, the successes, the day one type stuff?
Absolutely, yeah. Like just speaking from the current company I'm at, Raw Fury, like the very first game we ever launched was a success on day one. There were 3 of us. The 3 of us started the company. No one was taking a paycheck. Wow. My wife was like 6 months pregnant. And I was like, I'm gonna leave my stable job and go work with my friends doing this thing and not take money. And she's like, okay, but it paid off. It was cool. Yeah, I'm really lucky. But it paid off for us. And then we've also definitely had some launches that were completely lackluster, and that when we have not made money on those titles, and it's just like that's just the way it's gonna be. So you win some, you lose some, but the thrill never changes. So.
Wow, yeah, that's interesting because I've never been able to hear this type of perspective. I'm trying to think, what else can I ask?
Well, I will ask something. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So
anyone can.
I was talking to Victor Magnussen, who Vermintide, and he was saying that Lyric was playing their game the day it got released, and there was some weird thing where every time you tried to do something, it would crash. And so what happened was he said you have the major star who is excited about your thing, and he said you could see his excitement starting to drain. So he said, like, they were on Twitch, they were calling people, they're like, get us in touch with this fucker, we want to fix this right away. Have you ever, when something bad does happen, when you release something, is there ever a way to recover? Because that's a question that has always preoccupied my mind. Like, if they have a bad first week, other than Ubisoft, just saying we're going to throw money at Division until it's good, how do you go about fixing a failure, or not a failure? I don't want to call it a failure, but what I mean.
You could call it a failure. Like, that is such a case by case thing. I'll give you a real example. So this is like back in like 2010, 2011. I was working at a PR agency, and we were launching a little indie title called Magica. And back then it was like this really cool, innovative game. I'm not going to try to describe it because it'll take too long, but the short version of it is it's like a 3/4 dungeon crawler / adventure game with this really interesting magic mechanic where you mix spells on the fly, and it can be really difficult. Also, the game was incredibly buggy, but it was also really innovative. So, it launched.
So good.
You like
it? It is good. Dude, no. You said you don't know if people knew it, and I'm like, I don't know if you know, but that game is like considered by a lot of people as being a classic now. So sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm glad to hear that. Like, I have a lot of really good personal memories attached to that game because it's one of the first like kind of big indie games I got to work on when I like first started in this industry. So a lot of it's got a special place in my heart. Let's put it that way. Cool. But when it launched, it was a buggy piece of shit. So like it's like, oh, it's like 4-player online. The online like crashed all the time, and this wasn't during the age of Twitch, but YouTube was kind of around, and you were dependent on really large websites and people that are known on Twitter that wrote for like IGN and Ars Technica and GameSpot and stuff like that, and you'd see people just tweeting out like, yeah, I wanted to love this game, but I can't even boot it up, but it still sold well, right? And eventually, like within like 2 or 3 weeks, like it got patched up. It was much more stable, which is really cool. Fast forward to now, like, yeah, it's going to run on a lot of things, and it's totally fine, right? But back then, man, we were really afraid. Like, it could have gone either way. And I think in that case, it went positive because it did something that was really, really cool at the time. Something that was really different for gameplay. But what if it's just a regular old game, like a regular online game or something like, and it fails? Like, I don't think there is a way to recover from that, honestly. Unless you have a big built-in community already, like you're probably screwed, and that sucks. But it's the way it is, right?
I'm amazed right now hearing this type of stuff because it's all like the questions I've ever wanted answers for when it comes to this type of stuff.
Come on, bring it.
Tarmac, what you were going to say something?
So to sort of springboard off of that, what about early access in the indie scene? Right, because early access, you kind of only get one launch, right? As soon as you come out onto early access, people are going to start looking at your stuff while it's broken, and so they'll give it a little bit of extra ground, a little bit of extra rope to hang yourself with, or whatever you want to call it, right? But then you have your actual release, and media doesn't care, right? They've already been playing it for a little while. They've moved on. Is there much talk in the indie scene about early access and whether it should be avoided? I mean, because it doesn't look like it.
So like, it is a tough conversation, right? Because early access, as you said, that early access launch is basically your launch, and if it does poorly, you've got quite the mountain to climb, right? And if it does well, even if it does well, you still might not get that second win when your actual launch happens. I can think of two examples in the indie world where it did work out quite well. Well, one I think is going to work out quite well. One is just proven it has worked quite well. Subnautica is the successful one. It's been in early access for 2 years, 3 years, something like that, right? And it just recently went into full access. And I think because there was such a long time between when it first launched and what it is now, that so much of that game has changed that people are willing to give it another shot. Like, I actually did not realize it had launched out of early access until I saw 1 million people on Twitch and YouTube posting videos and streams. I was like, what? Why is everyone so interested in Subnautica all of a sudden? And then I was like, oh, okay, I see. You know, Dead Cells. Right. I don't know if anyone here has played Dead Cells. It's basically like a roguelite Castlevania. Like, it's a really good one. And it's been in early access for almost a year now. It had a pretty successful early access launch, and I don't know when it's going to come out of early access, but I think it's the kind of game that's going to change so much over time that people are definitely going to give it like another shot. You know, something else to think about, like kind of taking a play from PUBG, though I know that's obviously like a huge outlier, but you know, they coupled their retail launch out of early access with a console release. So you could do that too. You could be like, hey, this is our indie game. We're going to take it out of early access, and it's going to be on Switch at the same time. Boom! You know, and all of a sudden that's like hype. You know, people are going to be really excited for that. So I think there's ways to combat it, but you're right. It's totally a gamble still. Like there's no proven method for any of this stuff, or else everyone would be doing it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've been trying to sort out, you know, from the YouTuber side, you know, what can we do to make that better? Right, because some of these games, when they do finally come out, you know, it's really worth people's time, but the media cycle's already forgotten about it, and you know, it's really, really tricky because I don't want to do 3 different reviews for a video game. I want to do one, right? And they can then you go and you patch it, however many 6 months, 12 months down the line, and it's, you know, even more amazing 12 months later. But how do you get new people to come in then? It's just a really tricky situation. There's no easy way around it.
I also think I'm on sort of the opposite side, where I believe that if you charge money, you're able to be reviewed. So if somebody says we want $9, well, it better be fucking playable, because I'm going to tell you if it's not for $9, and I'm going to flay the fuck out of that if that thing doesn't run. But at the same time, you do have to look at them a little bit more flexibly. But what I think is a good idea is, like David was saying, was waiting, because I do think that it comes too quick. It's like early access, and then we're doing this, and it just dawned on me when he said it. I'm like, there are a lot of games that if they've waited, it's almost like the media cycle, different people, or just enough time where you're like, oh, you know what? I will check that out, because my memory isn't even fresh of Subnautica, for example, and I covered it, and I couldn't figure out why people were looking at the video. All of a sudden my video was showing up. You know how it is, guys, when like you're in YouTube and you can see a video and you'll be all, what the fuck? Did this go on sale? Like, why are people suddenly watching it? And then I did the same thing David did, where I went online and it's like, oh, I see. It came out of early access.
Yeah, I saw that.
I like the idea of delaying. I think that's a good I'd like more companies to do that versus the 2 months later, because it's just sort of messy.
It's good for a few reasons too, because like if first off, you have to be able to afford to be able to develop for that long, right? Because like, what if you release your game in early access and then no one buys it?
True.
All of a sudden it's like, oh, I don't think we could do our 2-year dev cycle after early access launch that we were planning on. So now you got to whip up something really fast. But let's just pretend that for a moment, like you have a moderately successful early access, right? Or you have some extra funds anyways to cushion you. Like, yeah, like keep it running for a couple years, build a community. Like that's what's going to keep you afloat when that game comes out in 1.0, right? It's like making sure that you have service to people that are actually supporting you, you know, and you guys know that as creators, right?
Absolutely.
Like you have to be able to do that. Like you have to be able to keep your community together and keep them positive and stuff like that, right? And then, You know, they'll keep watching you. They'll tell their friends about you. It's like the same thing with video games, obviously. So yeah, so the early access can provide you that too. It gives you time to really get to know who your community is. You know.
Is there anything specific to do to we'll say cultivate a community? Like, you know, like is there any like besides just handing out keys? Like, is there a trick? Is there a
Oh man, you must not be. You got to read David's Twitter, man. When somebody is oh man. I will wake up and every morning there's him dissing on somebody for requesting a key in a dumb way or whatever. He'll be like, he flays them, man. I'll be all, what the fuck is David talking about? And then I look and I realize somebody's asked for a key, you know, like in that stupid way where you get the wrong name or whatever. You're like, hey, David, can I check out Subnautica? And David's like, dude, we don't fucking do Subnautica, dumbass. Like, you know, it's awesome. You should check this shit out.
I'm not that mean, but like,
no, you're not that mean.
I will put people on blast if I get really dumb requests. I get some funny ones though. I had one guy reach out to me. He was like, "Hey, can I get a key for this?" He gave me no links to his channel, no links to a website. As far as I can tell, he's just regular Joe Schmo who DM'd me on Twitter. He's like, "Could I please get a game from you on PC? Because if I play League any longer, I think I'm gonna die." Like that was his reason. And I feel bad because he's probably dead now because I didn't give him a key. So we just kept playing League, I guess. Just died on his keyboard. Jungling. You know.
Yeah,
so
we've had it on the same side when like a PR reaches out to us and you know they'll have like clearly they copy and pasted the template
the form letter
for the letter and they didn't fill in our name, so it'll be like hello channel name in brackets and it'll have like the whole letter underneath. I'm like, oh. So you don't know who you sent this to then. So yeah, that's the same shit and I'm guilty of putting those people on blast too.
Yeah, no, I mean like I've never done that in a form letter. I can honestly say that. I have definitely mixed up names in the past, like when I was like an intern when I was first starting, because that's who's sending you these requests. Sometimes it's like someone's boss's is like, hey, you know that Maddie guy? He needs to play our game. Go make it happen. And then this intern's like super nervous, like typing up like the perfect letter for you, right? Or they've just copied and pasted something else from, oh, well we sent this one to Karak and he accepted it, so it must work on Maddie too. And they like forget to change the shit and they send it to you and. Yeah,
and David, I think I know I've told Tarmack and Maddie this. I thought I told David this, but I had that one who forwarded me where they were bad talking me, where they forwarded me to the person because I requested and they were like this POS and talking about me physically and shit, and I was like, what the fuck? What's going on? And it was so funny to talk to that person later, and they're all, yeah, dude, it may take a while. Those people, they do get jettisoned. I think that person's gone.
I think you DM me about that. You're like, hey, look at this. And you screen capped it. And I remember this. Oh my God. Yeah, that's that
one, and I screen capped you the one company trying to walk around the organic video. Do you remember a couple months ago?
You don't need to put that this is sponsored. It's totally fine. Like
it's okay.
The FTC's not gonna care. Yeah. God. Some people, man, like it trips me out. It just trips me out. You still see that sometimes, like, you know, when you see like a contract come around. Okay, first off, everyone talks to each other in this industry, right? You guys all know that, right? Like I have friends like Karak here who will send me contracts and be like, look what another company is trying to do to me. I'm like, oh my God, you're kidding me, you know? And it just trips me out. I want to say some of it's got to be like some naivety on a you know marketing firm's you know contract or whoever's sending it out, but also it probably went through a few eyes like before it reached your desk. So you know,
hey,
can't give them all the benefit of the doubt.
I have a question because Tarmack is you know he's a slightly smaller channel. He's been you know trying to contact different people, get people in line for reviews, and it's something that Maddie and I've done. But one question I do, and I know you'll answer this honestly, but I'm going to say, please answer honestly. If somebody blasts your game, how easy is it for you to give them the next one? Because I'm going to give a good example, and I'll let you give whatever example. Ubisoft, I will destroy a game, and they'll be like, hey, want to come and see our next game? And I'll be like, what?
Yeah,
oh, yeah. And Maddie and I've joked about this. What's the thought process for you, David? Like somebody says, you know, some shit about the game. And I understand you have to get your good PR out there. Do you just say, or do you send the next one right to them and say maybe this is your thing? You know.
So for me personally, what is it? I don't blacklist people. I've definitely had people talk some mad shit about games that we put out or whatever, right? You have to learn to not take it personally. You got to be like, okay, like on one hand, like I see like something really bad, I'm just like, oh, I feel terrible for the developer. They worked for a couple years on this thing, right? For it to be judged in 2 seconds by some guy who thinks he knows everything or she knows everything, right? And but on the other hand, you have to respect that, hey, people have different opinions on stuff. Not everyone's going to like everything, and that's it. And especially if the game is universally panned, like it's just terrible, then what can you do, right? I think I'll give you an example. There's a gentleman named Jim Sterling who you guys probably know from YouTube. But before he was doing his YouTube thing now, he used to be the reviews editor at Destructoid. And he's a huge Sonic fan. And so I mentioned earlier that that I worked at a PR agency that worked alongside Sega for some of their titles and stuff. And a friend of mine, he did the PR for a game called Sonic Colors, which I don't think was like a great Sonic game. Most of those 3 Sonics aren't great Sonic games, but Sonic Mania, though, on the other hand, like, ching. But Jim Sterling hated it, trashed it, gave it like a 3 out of 10 or 4 out of 10. You can probably find the review still on the internet somewhere. It's pretty bad, and what they did instead of writing some horrible email or whatever it was, they took one of the massive E3 banners that they hung that year to promote Sonic Colors. I mean, I'm talking it's like a 50-foot banner, and they mailed it to him.
Oh, that's awesome.
Thanks, man. Yeah, exactly. It's like, you know what? We totally understand, but just in case you turn things around, here's a nice gift from us, right? And so the reason why they invite you is because they're like, all right, well, maybe if we get to know this guy a little bit, like he won't shit on us next time. You know, to be honest, that is absolutely the underlying motive, right? And I think so long as it doesn't actually compromise your integrity, I'm talking directly to you three, like, then cool, take the trip. You know, whatever. At least you get to know some people. You get to shake some hands. You never know where someone's going to be later. Just because Ubisoft invites you somewhere and you meet so-and-so doesn't mean so-and-so is going to stay at Ubisoft forever. They might move on somewhere else.
That's one thing that surprised me. My first ever event was actually with Ubisoft, and I went to San Francisco. It was to see Far Cry 4, I think. And
next time here,
I
live
was
in the city.
Yeah, there you go. And there was this girl who worked there named Nikki, and she was sweet as hell. Really friendly and welcoming, and since it was my first experience with all of this, like working with PR, going to an event, like it was just very fresh to me. She was very welcoming, and then I go to another event for Ubisoft, she's not there, and I'm like, oh, maybe she didn't make the trip, and I go to another one, and it turns out she doesn't work there anymore. And so it was like this weird feeling, realizing, oh shit, right? They're not here forever. They move on.
Yeah, people move around all the time. That's totally a thing. Like I was gonna say, conversely, like you guys, I'm sure you know the name Angry Joe Vargas. I know I've told Karak this story before, but back in my Paradox days, like 2011, we flew him to New York for an event. And it was the first time I've ever met him. He had maybe like 30 or 40,000 subscribers at the time. What's he at, like 3 million now or something? And I remember going up to him, right? This is like 2011, right? This is New York City. I've never been there. It's my first time there. And I go up to him. I'm like, I got like a clipboard. I'm like, Mr. Vargas, I just want to let you know that your car service will be here to pick you up at 3:30, take you to the airport. And he looks at me in the crazy Texas accent. He goes, oh, hell, man. Really? You guys are driving me to the airport? That's crazy. No one's ever flown me anywhere. You guys have been so nice. This is great. You know? And like fast forward to now, right? It's like, if I want to get his attention, I'll just DM him, on Twitter or something like that. Or if I run into him at a show, it's always like a big-ass hug and, oh, let's go get a beer. Something like that, so we'll just zip off or whatever. Obviously, he's a bit more popular now, but the point is that we've built this relationship, right? Which is why I'm saying, like, hey, if someone wants to offer you a trip somewhere, like, go ahead and take it, and just make sure that it doesn't compromise your integrity. Still be you, right? Hey, if you don't like their next game they sent you out for, and you're gonna shit on it, like, they should have made a better game.
It is always. I've always felt it is. I wouldn't say awkward. It always feels a little strange when I like rip up a Ubisoft game and then I see them like a month later at an event and we're just talking like nothing happened. In the back of my head, I'm like, yeah, just shit all over Assassin's Creed Syndicate.
Oh, they know it too, though.
Yeah, and they're just like, oh, it's that guy. What's up, Matt?
Oh, I need to give this guy more alcohol.
Yeah. I think I told this to Maddie, but I had just emailed somebody from one of the largest companies, and I was like, I need a PR contact, blah blah blah, for this, and I didn't get a response, and I was getting ready to just say, just touching base again on this, and I got a response from like somebody who had like CEO in their name, and it was, well, I don't think it's bad. It was one of the heads of the main PR that handles Take Two, and he's like, no, I know your stuff. I've watched it, and it's that moment where you're reading, because whenever say, no, I know you, and then from that point on, you have no clue. It's like, when I read this, is it going to be the worst day of my life, where the person's like, and you fucking suck, you know, or something like that. And instead, he was very cool. And I think I told Maddie, even though he didn't like Syndicate, there's a funny story. Syndicate Gilberto is his name. He used to work at Ubisoft, and he's moved now. He handles smaller games. We recorded Syndicate footage that was not allowed to be recorded. And he was helping us, and it accidentally got recorded. And so Cadiz and I are at fucking, you know, at the Minecraft Telltale announcement booth or whatever, and I get these frantic texts that are like, Karak, come here now. You can't, you know, you've got this blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, this is a PR guy. So I'm all, what the fuck did we do? Like, because it was my first time. I was like, we're screwed. Like, all I wanted to do was cover a game. Like, I have no clue. And I show up, and he's one of the nicest dudes you'll ever meet. And he's like, hey, man, I just need to switch out, you know, USBs. You have footage that we're not allowed to show and stuff like that. So it's like, once they do know you, and he's been cool from that day on. Once they do know you, I think also people understand where a YouTuber comes from. And so if they do diss on something, for example, I bet you Jim Sterling got the joke. If that makes sense, if that is what I'm trying to say.
He's the one that posted about it. That's how I know the end of the story.
Like that's what I mean. Is like I think for the most part everybody sort of gets it, and unless it's just bad for bad's sake, or you're attacking it, or even good. I've had people say, like, you know, you can sort of tell that they're like, you really liked this, even though they worked on the game, and you're all, yeah, why? And you can sort of tell they're like, wow, I'm surprised they liked it, but. Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see how all the relationships sort of pan out.
When you cultivate a relationship, like, you know, we're all humans, right? So it's just like, all right, yeah, I don't think you know, Karak meant to actually take that footage. My fault for not looking. Like, yeah. I'll just ask him, like, hey, could you just not show that?
Yeah, and
that's it. And it'd be like, oh, we know each other, so you'll hopefully do it. You probably do it. Like, it's fine. That's the thing. It's like you know, like, again. We're just chit chatting right now. Right now we know each other, and you know, if you ever want to ask me for some information on something like that or whatever, like just give me a shout. It's like it's not a thing. Most of us, when we act like humans to each other, we get human responses. You know, in this case, you know, oh, just please don't show that. Like, go ahead, keep it for yourself. Just don't show it, and it's fine.
I had a moment one time I made an ass out of myself, and this wasn't even like one of my first times too. This is, I think it was PAX 2016. And I was demoing this indie game, and I have a problem understanding accents. I always have. I just suck with accents. And it was really loud in the section we were in on the floor, and this guy, he had more of like a British accent. It wasn't anything I was unfamiliar with, but it was just, I was having a tough time understanding him because of like the noise, and I was focusing on the game and trying to talk to him. And so he leans over, and I think he said, what are you, a creator, or what? Like, he was touching base, you know, getting to know me, and I heard him say, like, are you Irish? And so my response to him is like, nah, I'm Italian, actually, believe it or not. I know the hair kind of makes you think otherwise because it's a little more auburn. And this guy looks at me, like, steps back, like, what the fuck? Like, and my friends are looking at me like I'm hearing things, and they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, didn't he ask where I'm from, like, or what I am? And they're like, no, he asked you if you're a creator. I'm like, oh, okay. Man. And so I correct myself. I'm like, yeah, I do YouTube. And like I said something else afterwards that I can't remember, but like I did it a second time, and I was like, at that point I was like, this demo needs to end. I need to get the fuck out of here. So I've been on the other end where I've made an ass out of myself, and my friends still bring it up to this day.
It's totally.
I was just going to ask if Tarmack, you haven't got to go to one. I think you were saying that you are in 2018 going to try to go to an event.
Well, I know. So I went to PAX last year.
Okay.
You know, I've been to E3 and some of those sorts of things. As far as these PR events and stuff like that, I'm not big enough to get invited out to that kind of stuff. I did go to the Mass Effect 1 thing. They brought me along for that, but that was because I had worked on Jade Empire for a little while. So,
one of my favorite games. Wait, no, can't. Gotta stop.
Gotta stop.
One of my favorite games of all time.
Wait, pause.
I'm sorry.
What did you do on Jade Empire? I just played that for the first time last year.
Dude, you worked on Jade Empire?
Yeah, contract QA. I was just I had 8 months, 9 months, give or take.
Wow. That's pretty cool, man. That's awesome.
It was a lot of fun.
Sorry, that just surprised me.
Yeah,
that's all.
Crap. Okay, go on.
Anyway, sorry. Yeah.
I'd love to do more events, though. I'm hoping to get out to E3 this year and probably PAX again. I mean, it's just to me, it's fun. I know a lot of people get really burnt out on going to these big things, but I just don't. I love it. I love the spectacle. I love how ridiculous everything is. How you totally can't trust gameplay there, and just everything about it is just it's this facade of amazing. It's like going to Vegas, right? Yeah. Going to these things. It's like that for video games.
The glitz, the glamour. It's like the dog and the pony show. Yeah. No, I totally feel. But it's also fun to see. Oh, sorry.
No. I was just gonna say, for me, it's like the, because like sometimes like text on a screen, it can only permeate so much, and it's like when you actually see the gamers, the creators in person, and you interact with them in their content, it's a lot more of a connection being established, and it's a lot more exciting being a gamer, I feel, in those times. So that's why I don't get burnt out on those conventions. I look very much forward to them. I didn't mean to cut you off though, David. Go on.
No, you just made my point. I was just gonna say, like, it's really cool, like, sometimes though to see how the sausage is made, and conversely, it's also really great to finally meet like the people behind the mics, right, and behind the words that you see on websites. Like, speaking of words, I want to read what the first time I ever heard Karak speak about a game that I worked on, and then having this impression of this man, and then meeting him finally after like months and months and months later at a PAX. So this is almost the opening. Aside from your introduction, this is what you said about Pillars of Eternity. This is
God. Here we go.
Oh, this is so good. I can't say it like you, right? But I'm gonna try my best. This game was kickstarted, which, just like Divinity Original Sin, means that a good deal less people were screwed during the creation of this game. And in fact, the creation of this game even happening in the first place is probably completely based on the fact that fans know what they want far more than some overlords sitting in their CEO chair made of customer support letters, ordering escorts for their sordid sexual deviances, and tactically figuring out just how many types of DRM they could get into a game while squeezing every bit of fun from a title like DLC was created to suck out our own soul juices.
Yeah, yeah, that's embarrassing.
Oh man,
Karak, did you do that in one breath?
Yeah,
he did.
Yeah, I can usually record most of the review in one like take, but that was back. I can't remember. I think it was Divinity and Pillars hit, and they were so different. I mean, and because I think everybody here's played Pillars, and everybody here's probably played Divinity, and you play them, and you're just like, whoa, these are like not what everything else is. There's a spirit to them, and that I distinctly remember being pretty fired up.
But I thought it was really cool. I mean, again, like I'm watching this, right? First ever time I've aside from a couple short email exchanges, have I seen this guy's work, and I'm just like, wow, that's awesome. Like, that's great. And I remember sending it to the CEO and be like, hey, check out what he said about you. And but he was laughing though, like the CEO of Paradox. He's like, and also Obsidian, Fergus Urquhart. He's a cool guy. Both him and Paradox CEO Fred Wester are both like just really down to earth, like actual gamer dudes. Like they have companies to run, but they're not like. It's not like some of the other soul-sucking corporations out there, at least. And especially Obsidian in particular, only because like they're an independent studio. Technically, they're not owned by any large publisher. Like they're like a 200-person studio that is fully maintained by contract work, which is like something you don't really see nowadays.
Sounds unheard of.
It is, and that's why Pillars of Eternity is cool because it's their own IP. It's like CD Projekt Red. No one owns them either. Like it's just them and The Witcher, all that Witcher money.
That's what worries me about the private division thing, because So did Kickstarter not pan out the way that they had hoped, right? Because if it had, why would you bother getting a publisher for the new Obsidian RPG, right?
Ooh, I'll tell you why.
I would love to know.
Yeah, the reason why is because there are thousands and thousands of backer rewards that if you're just a development studio and not a publisher, you might not be equipped to handle that stuff. It might be easier to find a partner to do it for you, right? Like obviously I can't divulge like details and contracts and profit sharing and stuff like that, but you could reasonably surmise that the traditional publisher developer deal, like the split of revenue, is not applicable to a situation like that, since they crowdfunded all their own development costs. So it's really just about having someone help them out with a lot of the other things. There are a lot of things that developers aren't equipped for, or it takes a long time, right? Like even getting a Steam page up is like not a simple task. Like you're like, oh, indie devs can do it. You're like, yeah, but you know how long they probably spent on that? Like, and then imagine if you want to put the game on console. There's like crazy amount of hoops just to get through certification. It's like, oh, we made the game in Unity. It's not like you hit a button and it's like, oh, there's the Xbox version, there's the Switch version. Like it doesn't work like that, So
yeah. I remember some of the old cert stuff when we were doing the final run up to Jade. And things like in the options menu, this option has to be listed before this option, kind of thing. Like that was a rule from Microsoft for the original Xbox. I don't remember any other specific, but it was a lot of just kind of, I don't know, really
Minutia,
bizarre things like that. Yeah.
There are funny, like archaic ones. It's like, what if someone unplugs and replugs a controller 100 times in a row? What does the game do? Just all kinds of like weird stuff. Like a large laundry list of things that you have to make sure your game behaves properly when it does like these things that no one's probably ever going to do.
My friend has done QA at TT Games for a while, and I'm just thinking of imagining trying to break those Lego games. Like, the things you got to do for that, it's crazy.
What I don't know if you guys saw, but so when I was a kid with the Atari 2600, you could slightly install or put the cartridge in, or you could flick the reset button, and that was how you got into debug. And so I talked about this on a podcast just last week, and somebody emailed me the coolest video I've ever seen. And unfortunately, I can't remember. I'll have to give it to Maddie. But basically, it's a Sonic Blast's creator who said that what he did was every bug that the game would display, he wrote out a thing so it would say, okay, here's what happened. But then he covered it up and said, you have attained a secret level chew screen. So he got through certification every time. And he said Sega at the time, had no clue. But what would happen is, he said the reason why he figured out what was going on is people were saying if you tap the top of the Genesis, he would get this secret level screen. And he was like, I didn't program that in. And then it dawned on him, it's because the CPU, there's a little glitch just for a second. And he wrote in this fake page to basically say, you've found a secret level choice. Just go ahead and choose a secret level from here. And people thought they were being rewarded. They were like, oh, awesome. I did something cool. It was just some crazy little bit of tech behind the scene. And and he was talking about how hard it was to get through cert. He's like, I sailed through cert on the next 3 games because I did that.
That is genius.
It's ingenious.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start using that.
YouTube. Look it on YouTube.
It's like when we port a game to Switch and it and the Switch freezes up. It's like just reset your Switch for a special prize. It's like gonna show up on the screen.
What's the game? Eternal Darkness. That's the game that also fakes that it did that shit. I don't know if you guys played that on the game. Was it GameCube? Was Eternal Dark?
Yeah.
And it would say like, your save game's corrupt, and you're all, are you kidding? But it was just fucking with you, and it would pretend the controller came unplugged. It would clip on. You guys should check out some of the crazy shit that they had installed, and a lot of the ideas that they did, because it was about sanity. A lot of the ideas in that game were based on bugs, and they were like, hey, I got an idea. Let's just put that in as a bug, or as one of the sanity bending moments, and pretend it's on purpose.
I bet the cert process on that game was a pain in the ass. Oh no, it's meant to do that. That's on purpose. Let that through.
How do they not just call bullshit and let that slip? I don't get that.
I mean, if you're the creator and you say that that's the way it should be, then
I guess they just let them launch it.
Yeah, right.
That's incredible, man.
They're like, fuck it, ship it.
Seriously. Man, it's been fascinating learning just how much goes on behind the scenes with all of this. I gotta say, this has been easily one of the most, for me personally, at least mentally stimulating conversations we've had on the show in a while.
Oh man.
What Maddie's saying is I'm usually and Lone are very boring.
Yeah, I was like, wait, I just totally roasted my co-host at the same time.
Oh, dude,
Whoops.
Sorry, you guys suck.
No, it's cool to have people on here. It's cool to have people on here who have a little bit, because we've talked to, let's see, we've done a couple voice actors and a couple people who did like level design and stuff like that, but I didn't know Tarmack did QA. I've done it on one game and a couple other side games online. There's a company that does it, and David with his, all the publisher stuff in the background. It's always so interesting because like everybody comes at it from a different fucking angle, and it's so awesome to finally get somebody who's on that side to be like, no, we know you're being a dumbass or whatever. Because you're always like, maybe they didn't notice. It's like, no, like you said,
we totally know
who you are.
We totally know.
We know who you are.
It's like, it's weird. It's weird sometimes being a PR person because it's like, my job is to, basically I kind of keep my finger on the pulse of like YouTube, of Twitch, and whichever websites are still running that have large readership or whatever, right? And because of that, like you maybe follow someone on Twitter or you hear about their shenanigans or whatever, right? And then if you meet them for the first time, you have to pretend like I don't really know you, like we've just met for the first time, but secretly you're probably like, yeah, I've heard some stuff, And it's like it's kind of this weird game that you play sometimes, but in the end, like once you actually meet somebody, it's like, well, okay, cool. Well, now we have our own history. Now we're humans together. Now we can bullshit with one another, and I don't have to hear hearsay anymore, So, but for a while before you meet somebody, it's like, okay, I gotta do my research, and it's like it's a little weird, but I try not to do that actually.
It's also I think I bet better because there's that almost, at least what I do is I have this like whole professional back and forth thing, and then when someone meets me, I drop the F-bomb twice in the same sentence. They're like, oh, this is who you really are.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. It's like when I was coming in, like I don't want to sound like I was like I'm creepy or anyone that does PR is creepy. What I mean is like before I came on this podcast, I was like, well, I've never met Maddie before, and I've never met Tarmack before, and I should at least listen to a podcast, So, and that's why I discovered like, okay, so Tarmack's a guest, and Maddie, this is his show, and I listened to one or two episodes, and I listened to Karak's latest podcast. So you're a Puzzle Pirates fan, by the way?
Dude, yeah.
Did you ever listen to?
That's how I met my wife, or not met, but courted my wife, I guess. We played Puzzle Pirates for hours and hours and hours. That and a game called Dofus, which is a French.
I know Dofus. I played that MMO. Yeah,
dude, I love that game. Yeah.
I was asking because a friend of mine used to run this. This is going to date all of us. Well, not Maddie, but
just
the rest
you
of
and
us.
Sorry, fellas.
A friend of mine used to run a Puzzle Pirates shoutcast on Winamp.
On
Winamp.
Exist anymore?
No. That's how long ago this was. This is like 2002, 2003. The reason why I bring it up because he's now the head of PR at Paradox, and but back in the day, he ran a fan podcast. Well, they weren't called podcasts because that iPod didn't exist.
Yeah.
It was a shoutcast, and it was on Winamp, and to plug in like the IP address, and they had like up to 100 listeners. They had upgraded their server twice because apparently it was popular in the Puzzle Pirates community.
Wow.
It's called the Shandy something. I can't remember what it's called now, but yeah. Small world stuff.
Everybody always teases me and Maddie because we like these weird games. Like Sims is easily my favorite like series of all time by such a landslide. And I remember telling Maddie, we have a GIF of Maddie reacting to me saying that, like, because he's like, oh, Karak will like a shooter, and I'm like, nah, Sims are my favorite. You see Maddie go, and you're like, what the fuck? And then Maddie told me, Maddie and I, that's one of the ways that we always tease each other because Maddie likes Hardline and I like Far Cry Primal, and so we're just constantly ripping on each other about like what somebody likes or what somebody dislikes. And it's funny because I think that's why I enjoy like being on the podcast and stuff like that, is because it is laid back. He does bring on guests like Tarmack and yourself, and you get these different, you get a little bit different stories, I think, when you bring, I'm not dissing on anybody who's AAA or bigger, but when you bring in a smaller YouTuber like Tarmack, he's going through stuff that even though I was smaller at one time, maybe it wasn't the same. maybe things have changed, right? And then Maddie's at a different size, and I'm at a different size, and then somebody like yourself. It's so cool because you'll get these AAA guys. They can't say a lot, not to be rude, but they can't, or they won't. I don't know, and that's why I definitely appreciate you guys coming on and hearing some of these funny stories, because it's just like it makes it a little less intimidating, I think, for a lot of people who are listening. You go, okay.
You know, sometimes like the AAA guys, like they want to say stuff, but you're right, they're shackled, they can't. I'll give you a really good example, actually. You guys keep up with Battlefield, right? You guys played Bad Company 2?
Yes.
Yeah,
that's my favorite one.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm about to disappoint you then.
Oh, here we go.
No, it's not that bad, but like it's not that bad, but like so at Raw Fury, right? We have 2 guys that I work with. One is a co-founder like me, and the other one is a guy that came in really early. There are 13 of us now. I'm talking about the number 2 guy and the number 5 guy. And the number 2 guy is the associate producer for Bad Company 2. He worked at DICE in Stockholm. And the number 5 guy is the executive producer for Bad Company 2, right? Wow, okay. So these are 2 guys that have absolutely worked in AAA, and they made what is arguably one of the best like Battlefield games from what I understand. And neither of them have been at that studio for years now. So any new Bad Company game that comes out is not going to be produced by the same guys who made number 2 like amazing, and they're at Raw Fury now. Sorry, they're with me. So
I'm gonna buy all your games now. Congrats, right. Your job is done. You've sold some products.
Yeah, you're done. David's done his work.
I've done my work. We're not releasing first-person shooters. I apologize. But the reason why I was bringing it up is because I mean, when these guys were at EA, like. And this is not just EA. This is every large publisher, right? Like, sometimes you just can't say shit. Like, you go on a press tour and you want to really talk about something, and you can't. You're shackled. They stifle you a little bit. But now that these guys, are at a much smaller company, and we're like just like this kind of scrappy upstart, like we just say whatever we want, and it's great because we only answer to ourselves. And it's like it's pretty fantastic. But the AAA companies have humans there as well. Just sometimes they got to think about, do I want to keep my job or not? So I'm not going to talk shit. But believe me, I think they all want to, or not just talk shit, but they all want to just talk about stuff that they are not supposed to talk about. They want to give you the inside scoop. They want to tell you about everything, and they can't. So always keep that in mind.
Because the CEO doesn't want to answer that question in the earnings call.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
No, I refer back to like a conversation I had with someone at Bethesda. I wonder if it's almost like, okay, we're off the record here. We're talking in person, so it's not like you can just go and show this information to someone else. Because I remember it was when they were first announcing that big review policy change of theirs that they've now backed down on. But initially, it was met with a lot of criticism, a lot of confusion. And I remember talking to one of the PR people there, and they were like, yeah, we don't know what the fuck's going on with that. And I was just like,
I love it.
Huh, okay. Like, but it was to hear that from a AAA company, it was different. Because, most people are like, we got it fixed, and we are thinking about our community and our fans. Like, you usually think of that, real business front. He's like, yeah, we don't fucking know really why they're doing this, but they are.
Well, Tom Kalanski, the old Sega president, he ran Sega during Genesis and starting at Saturn days. He has done various interviews. He's out of the business completely, but one of the things he had said also was that he notices, and multiple people have actually said this. Michael, I think his name's Mendheim, he did Mutant League Football, and he just released the new one. He said this as well, that when you're at those big companies, not only many times do you want to say something, but it would actually behoove everybody if you did. Because when there's a softness there, fans will dig into it. And they will be like, you fucking said. And I agree with devs where sometimes they're like, we can roll shit back. What are you talking about? Like, it is our game. I can, if Bob Ross wants to paint over the top of his fucking tree, he can do that. That's his. And I think with gaming, we have issues with that. And that was one of the things he said, though, is that right now it's like, a lot of the bigger companies probably would like, some of those people working for them, would love to be all, yeah, you can do this or that, or you can't do this, or we're not going to put that. But it's become such a soft word kind of situation that they're not allowed to. And then that burns them in the long run, because fans will remember. There will be a subreddit created for your game, And that subreddit's entire job will be to tease you until you want to die. Like, if you go to subreddit and you look up any game, there's a subreddit for it. And I can guarantee you that somebody said something that's pissed somebody off. It's pretty crazy to hear, like, the stories of that. And that, yeah, like David said, there's people in charge who want to probably say exactly what we want to hear, but they're just fucking stuck, you know? It sort of sucks, man.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true.
I feel like I wouldn't be built for that type of position ever then, because...
Or maybe you'd be perfect. You'd be the one outspoken one, you know, that everyone would look up to. Yeah, that could be you.
That'd be nice if I worked at a company like that, but I feel like they'd fire me on day one. They'd be like, dude, shut up.
Yeah, exactly. Could you just shut your damn trap, Matty, please?
You got one job. Stop fucking up. Thank you. Just a couple of pieces of news that I wanted to touch on before we start wrapping this up. We got to talk about Battlefront 2's and those microtransactions. We have to. All right, so EA, they decide we're going to talk on this earnings call about our sales for Battlefront 2. Sells 9 million copies. To me, that sounds like an immense success, Star Wars or not. I know there's an expectation because it's the Star Wars brand. They deem it an underperformance. They also say that part of that is due to the microtransactions. So as we were having our chat before this podcast, what do they do but decide to bring them back still? Got to get some hot takes here. Let's hear it about this wonderful decision by EA.
I think they sort of said that they were going to come back the moment that they took them out, right? Like that was a piece that was in there that we're going to have to rework this and think about how, and it was them basically saying, yeah, this is totally coming back. It just, we don't know what it's going to look like. I'll be curious to see if they actually change anything or if they're just waiting to see if anybody remembers. They just put it back in and
that's what
fuck
I was
you guys.
thinking. They're just going to wait till everyone forgets. What about you,
What
David?
about you, David?
Oh, man. Yeah, it seems really counterintuitive. Like, the one thing that got you in hot water is the one thing you want to put back into the game. Like, yeah, I get it. Like, you fell short of your goal by 1 million units. Like, I'm also a little baffled too. I'm like, okay, I know how large these budgets can be. Like, 9 million and you didn't make the mark. Like, that doesn't mean it's not successful. It just means that they projected a higher number. Projections, that's a whole other thing. That's like a bunch of BS. I don't know how anyone ever comes up with these numbers. How much should we sell? 10 million. Let's just call it 10 million. You know. But to put a thing that is not only despised in this industry, but is extra despised for you specifically, like, to be like, oh, the answer to more money is just to put the microtransactions back in, which is the reason why we didn't make money. Maybe we would have made 10 million copies if we didn't have this horrible PR shitstorm that happened before our launch. But, well, let's just put the microtransactions back in and see what happens. Like, I don't know what they expect is going to happen. So I don't think it's the best decision. I think they could have thought of other ways to increase revenue. Like, I know that running a live service is obviously not cheap, you know, but maybe they could have went back to the drawing board and found something else. I don't know what that something else would be, but I don't think the answer is microtransactions. So, yeah.
David, how much longer do you have? Because we want to make sure.
I'd say I probably got like 15 more.
Okay. I was going to say one thing also, and we said this prior to the podcast, but I got to say it because I absolutely hate these guys. I'm completely shocked that anybody at Capcom Fiscal and EA Fiscal, like, these guys don't seem to understand, or finance, they don't seem to understand whatsoever, like, how to identify, like David said, you know, their forecasting and what they're going to do. Because remember when Resident Evil sold and they're like, yeah, we only sold like 5 million, we expected 6 or whatever. And it, like David said, it's like you look at it and you're all, really? Like, who did? Who? Give me the fucking who so I can grab them.
What's the formula?
Yeah, what is this? Because I swear to God, everybody who's doing math there are English majors, because their math is fucking terrible. Like, it's the worst math I've ever seen. And it's sad because here's another thing that hurts it. As an industry, we do somewhat collect on negative news. That's okay. I think we can all agree that that's sort of how it goes. Mm-hmm. When that kind of news is announced, it does double damage, because it's like, we didn't do as well. And then people are like, why didn't you do as well? and we start talking about all these different things, and then they add in microtransactions. But here's the big deal. I'm not 100% sure microtransactions are as bad as their score on Metacritic, which is 68. That is fucking terrible. Or it was at the time. So you have like 3 things hitting them all at once, and at least 2 of those they did themselves. And it's like, I mean, I get that they probably have to say it during their meeting, like Tarmack was saying, you know, like your job is to go out there and lie as eloquently as possible without lying. Like, that is sort of your job. But at the same time, saying shit like that, saying we did not meet, it immediately makes you just go, and remember, I didn't like Star Wars, so I'm not defending them, but it makes people just gravitate towards that. And then you add in the microtransactions on top, and you're like David said, you're like, really, guys? You're the ones. It would be as bad as Activision doing it, you know, and just saying, yeah, we've added more. You know, look at GTA. Those guys, Rockstar, got away with saying on an investor meeting, we have not monetized enough. And the reason why no one really attacks them too much is because GTA 5 is so popular and such a good game. And so Star Wars was not. And I think that that's one of the problems EA is going to have, is they've rolled up their own issues plus the issues that they have for that game. I don't see how that game is ever... and I think Maddie did a video yesterday on this. I just don't see how we're going to see a Star Wars Battlefront 3.
Yeah.
And I want one, by the way. I want a good one. Mm-hmm. I don't think we're going to see one for like 4 or 5 years.
There is a way out, I think, for them. I don't think they're going to do it, but there is a way out. Duplicate the Overwatch loot box system. If all they do is they do a straight cosmetic run, and they come out saying this is exactly the same as Overwatch, people will defend them for it.
I don't disagree with that at all. I think that's true.
I think, like, you know, when you look at the entire problem, like why was this set of particular microtransactions right in this game like horrid? It's because you know, it affected gameplay. That's like the number one no-no. Mm-hmm. Like, you had people on the internet who were like mobile game developers who have done nothing but free-to-play games, right? With microtransactions that were like, even we don't do that. Like, you know, they're like, if you're gonna put microtransactions in your game, you got to make sure that it's still fair across the board when it's a multiplayer online game. Yeah. It's like I play a lot of PUBG. I like PUBG. The only microtransactions they have in there are when you want to buy crates. Tiny bit of a gamble, but it's only for cosmetic items. So, you know, I'm the one that's choosing to give money for the chance at a cosmetic item, right? I'm the dodo for that. But because I get like a scarf or a trench coat or whatever, you know, shows up in my little crate, it's not going to affect like if I can shoot better than somebody, if I can 360 no scope some dude from 1,000 meters, you know, or anything like that, right? Like, so, you know, that to me, that's like the right way to do it, right? You know, and so yeah, if they're going to put the same kind of microtransactions that they did, they tried to do, excuse me, in the fall, so it's another PR shit storm just waiting to happen, man.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like, that's why I think they're just waiting for it to boil over, because they know whenever they release it, I think they're thinking, whatever we do, they're going to hate it. So let's wait till people care less. I always thought their way out of it was like, man, imagine if Battlefront 2 went free to play and they just put a bunch of cosmetics in there. I feel like a lot more people would gravitate towards that. But like Karak was mentioning, I said in a video, I was like, Battlefront 2 just in every way, shape, and form looked like, you know, this was the big one. You know, it was like the campaign, had all the eras of Star Wars, tons of maps, modes. Like, it really looked like it. And I still say to this day, despite my issues with the game, that I enjoy it way more than the first one. But it's still got its problems. And like you said, Karak, you know, it needs to be fixed. And so they're doubling their issues. They're double dipping here. So it's like adding. I love the logic though. That's what I can't get over. The idea of this is our problem, so let's go back to our problem. You know, it just doesn't cease to blow my mind that they are somehow returning to it. And that's where I think it comes down to business. They're like, you know, because Battlefront 2 is the third highest budgeted video game title ever. So they're probably thinking, we got to make our money somehow. And, you know, community be damned. Let's throw those microtransactions back in a way that can work to some extent, that people might buy. And so I feel like that's where they're heading with it.
I think you had a good idea, which is free-to-play, because they're not in the top. As far as I remember, somebody posted an NPD. They're not even in the top, like, 20 anymore for sales. So it would be cool to go free-to-play, since you're not making a ton of sales and see if people I think that's a good. I didn't even think of the free to play because I don't like a game that cost money being free to play suddenly. I think that there's
I agree completely.
You need to almost look at like it depends on how long, but there's some really shady shit that could happen if that becomes okay. But yeah, I would agree. That's a good point, Maddie. I didn't even think about the free to play thing, and that
even if
is
that
probably
like
another way.
2 months from now, though, I still think that'd be such a small window when the game just came out in November. It would a lot of people would be mad, I think, over that. So it's like they're in a really funky position where they might just need to make this microtransaction system work. If it does continue to work and generate a lot of revenue, then maybe go free to play and add a little bit more to that microtransaction system, and you might have a lot more of a profitable game with a long tail afterwards, or a slow burn. I think that's the word or phrase you used. I think that could work out. But that's everything we really had to talk about. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining the show. This was a wonderful time, I gotta say. And both of you are more than welcome to come back on, by the way, whenever you want. Just feel free to send me a message.
You always know when a podcast goes well, when you had a plan, like an outline, we're going to hit this, we're going to talk about this, and then none of it happens, and it just kind of flows on its own. It's perfect.
Yeah. Exactly what happened. I briefed everyone beforehand. I'm like, all right, here's the newest bits we got. We'll probably talk about this. And it just
that's the same lie I use. Yeah, that's I don't know if I agree with Tarmack too much, but that's Maddie and I and Lone. It'll be like, yeah, we got blah, 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 and then pretty soon it's like, what are we fucking talking about?
Yeah.
And but I think that what happens is you're talking about something you enjoy, and that's one problem with a lot of podcasts. I think is that it's like the news regurgitated, and that's great. But if there's 85 podcasts doing that, then it can be like 85 times of hearing the same thing from different people. So it's cool to get people like yourself, who's a smaller YouTuber, and like David on here, who can sort of talk about things that I don't think people hear. They still hear, because I've seen David on interviews and stuff. They still hear, but a little less, I just think.
Yeah, in the grand scheme of things, honestly, like most people don't care, actually. They don't. Yeah. Most people don't even know the difference between a developer and a publisher, and that's fine. Like, well, people like us, obviously, we keep up with that, right? It's like when you know like all the movies that your favorite director has done, or something like that, right? But most people are just like, oh yeah, I like that one movie from 10 years ago. I don't remember who did it, but and that's fine. That's totally cool. But yeah, so most people don't want to hear the crap that people like me have to say. But glad to say if someone ever asks. So give me a shout anytime. It's great to be here. Thank you so much.
Of course. And any final plugs? Anything else you guys want to add in before I wrap it up?
Nope.
By Dandara, February 6th.
All right, there we go. Everyone listening better be...
I'll plug Tarmack real quick.
Okay.
Because, and I believe this, so fuck off if you don't believe me. He has some of the best... There's a reason why Total Biscuit retweets his shit. And I think that as a smaller YouTuber, it's easy for him to get lost, and I would really like people to check him out. Because even myself, where I have a certain thought process, or Maddie does, and we're pretty solid in it. We're like, yeah, we're not going to change. This is our opinion, blah, blah, blah. I would say of all YouTubers, almost all YouTubers, Tarmack's the one that's changed my mind on a couple things. Like, made me go, fuck. Like, I get it now. Like, yeah, so, Hetty, you got it. Now you got to do that every time, Tarmack. You got to, no, I'm just so. But there's a reason why his stuff is that good. There's a reason why, big people in the industry have talked about his stuff. So I would really suggest you check it out. It is really, really good.
I agree.
It's a ton of fun. And
once again, all that stuff will be linked in the description down below, and we hope you check it out. And that'll conclude episode 142 of the H.A.M Radio Podcast. This has been an absolute pleasure, and we'll catch you guys next week with another special guest.